Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our stream. Good morning, Bennett. Good morning, Rosanna. And a very good morning to Mr. Scott Hiley, Comrade Scott Hiley, who even saluted me. Maybe it's just my little fake beret I got going on. Bennett, how are you? What's going on in your life? How are your book sales going? Show them
Um,
your new book so everybody can see.
yeah, I've got it right here. You can get it on international publishers. But this has been a bit of a crazy week for us here in DC. So we're managing, but things are getting pretty crazy.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit, but you held up the book too quickly. You put it down too quickly. Put
Okay,
it up again so people can
okay.
see it.
Half the world, a
Half the
century of
world,
communist writing.
history of communist women's writing. Very good. I was trying to get one to hold up here, but we all sold out. So we have to reorder. And that's a good thing. Are you working on any new books
Right now, I'm working on my dissertation, so
on your
it's
dissertation? Okay.
in progress.
I'm jealous. I haven't written one book. I better get busy because time is passing. Rosanna, good morning. You just got
Good
back from
morning.
Colorado. How was your trip out there? How's the party in Colorado?
The party's good. They're really active in the Palestinian struggle and the immigrant rights struggle. We visited a detention center and we spoke a little bit to different people, and they're all doing good. Very active.
That's great to hear. And Scott, upstate New York, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But you were just recently in Harper's Ferry. Did you visit
Yeah,
any of the John Brown Memorial places
I
down
did.
there?
Toured Harper's Ferry, and just kind of thought about good trouble and the necessity of it, and the struggle that still for the liberation of the African American people that is ongoing and has now reached a new phase in this assault on DC. Um, I guess here in upstate New York, we don't yet have, military taking over our town or the president taking over our police force, but um, the writing's on the wall for everyone. Um,
If we're not careful, it's coming. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We are streaming on Twitch, we're streaming on Facebook, we are streaming on X, and of course, here on YouTube. If you like our show, please click the button, like it. And if you really like it, we want you to subscribe. We are 400 subscriptions shy of 16,000. So please help us in the next couple months get that extra 400. Hurry up, do it. What are you waiting on? Click it, share it. Please spread the word. Today, comrades, friends, siblings, we are talking the boots on the ground, the decisions of the Trump administration to send troops first to LA and now to DC. And we don't know where they might go next because they're threatening to send them to Chicago. They say if Mamdani gets elected mayor of New York, they might send the troops to New York, take over New York. You know, this is it is getting funky out there, really funky. And we better, get that funk out our face, as Parliament Funkadelic used to say back in the day. And it all started, Rosanna, in Los Angeles, first with ICE. Now Trump sent in the National Guard, and a huge protest movement has risen. And I think they sent in 4,700 or so soldiers to LA. Now I think there's a contingent of about 250, 300 left. And they're even thinking about, or maybe they're doing more than thinking about it. I think that the Mr. Mann has ordered the Pentagon to create what they call a what is it called, a reaction force to deal with civil unrest. And so, Rosanna, what happened in LA and how were you able to push the troops out? What kind of unity efforts were necessary by the people of Los Angeles to make that happen?
Well, I was really proud of the people of Los Angeles and the movement here that's growing, continues to grow, because on the onset there was some violence, but it was quickly understood that that violence was a provocation, that people were being provoked, and that it was the reason, it was used as an excuse to bring in the troops. And so they immediately stopped all of that violence, even though the police continued to provoke the military is just guarding the buildings. They're not doing anything other than that. But the police are the ones that are kind of agitating and being aggressive. We just had a demonstration on Tuesday, and we were there peacefully, and the police just rushed in on us in an attempt to provoke us, in an attempt to get us upset, in an attempt to create this type of image of violence. But nobody bought it. Nobody bought it, and I was so happy that people are understanding that what they're trying to do is create this idea that there is this unrest, which is not at all true. you know and so I think that that's what has driven them out, is the fact that we're not falling for that idea that things are unrest. We're not allowing them to agitate us to the point of becoming violent and aggressive throughout the city. We are told to videotape and to get people's name and birthday so that we can find them later, but to videotape and not to fall into any kind of provocation, because then it is not part of it messes up the movement. It's not part of what we need to be doing in order to win this battle here in Los Angeles. And I think that that's what's key is don't give in to that provocation. It's there to give excuses to send in more troops, and they weren't able to do it here, and I think that that's really key.
Don't be provoked. That's an important lesson. Bennett, something even more insidious and dangerous has developed in Washington, D.C., where they not only deployed troops, but they did it under the fake, counterfeit reason that they're combating crime, that there's a crime emergency. Um, and they've also seized control of DC's police department. Now, DC has a form of self government that's called home rule. What is home rule? And is this a step when Trump took over the police department in the direction of taking over the city directly and completely?
So yes, home rule is our quasi state government essentially. DC does not have statehood, so we have a council and a mayor, but Trump is trying to circumvent our self governance and directly take over DC by its police force. Just yesterday evening, Attorney General Pam Bondi issued an order to install the head of the DEA as an emergency police commissioner in DC, which is illegal. And DC's Attorney General has stated so, and that MPD is under no direction to follow that order. But Trump has tried to fully seize control of DC's police force in addition to deploying the National Guard. So the situation in DC is a little unique because Trump doesn't just have the power to deploy the National Guard, but also to federalize our own domestic police force. So this is we always point to Dimitrov saying that fascism is, not the succession of one government by another, but is a, dictatorship of a new type. And that, I think, is what we're seeing in DC, is the direct intervention of a fascist leader to take over DC entirely. There are already proposals in Congress to rewrite the Home Rule Act to give Donald Trump indefinite control of DC, because the Home Rule Act only allows him to take over and federalize DC for up to 30 days. And they are trying to expand that already.
So the struggle now, it seems, is on the a time issue, whether or not they'll be able to extend it over 30 days. But the taking over of the policing forces of the DC government, that's some dangerous stuff, you know, and it's primarily, though not completely, directed not only at home rule, Bennett, but DC is also a sanctuary city, isn't it? And so they're trying to find a way to step up even more aggressively their attack on immigrant labor. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of scrutiny started to be placed on DC's sanctuary status after many of us in DC came together, including the late Arturo Griffiths, to get non citizens the right to vote in DC, and has been a consistent target of MAGA forces in Congress to overturn this. And to be quite frank, this retaliation seems like it's punishment for a progressive and immigrant heavy city, that they are seeking to push back against DC as a progressive haven in the region, and trying to circumvent our own laws about protecting immigrants in DC, to the point that now MPD is collaborating with ICE agents to communicate citizenship status to ICE agents of people that even aren't even being detained.
Which they were formally prohibited to do. It's important to point that out. By law, they were formally prohibited to do that. Scott, first the Trump administration started ignoring the courts, right? They just ignored them, you know? Okay, you made that decision, but I really didn't hear it. Could you explain it again? Oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. They kept delaying, you know. Um, then they started building concentration camps, like that alligator alley thing in the Florida, where is that, the Everglades, you know? Um, and now the army is in the streets. Is this creeping fascism, going back to the point that Bennett just made, or is that too dramatic of a assessment?
I don't
Scott?
think it's too. I don't think it's too dramatic at all. I think, we've talked for a while about the fascist threat sort of coalesces in spots. It takes shape and becomes more intense, and it's doing that in more and more places. We saw it in LA. We see it now in Washington, DC, and I think it's important to point out. Um, a lot of the time when Americans think of fascism, their mind goes first to Germany and to Italy, or maybe to other dictatorships in other countries. The fascism that we are getting in this country is homegrown, right? It's rooted in it's neo-Confederate. It's rooted in the history of white supremacy, and that's really important. I think to bring out with respect to DC. Washington D.C. is no longer a majority black city, but African Americans are still the largest racial and national group in the city. I think something like 45% or so. So you have a very significant black population in a city that's also, kind of a beacon in some ways for black culture and black activism and scholarship. Um, and this government um, asserting its direct, violent, coercive control over that population, which is already living in a state of semi-disenfranchisement because of the the special status of Washington D.C. So it's not just it's of a piece obviously with the attacks on immigrants and the attempt to impose the anti-immigrant terror, but it's also of a piece with the attacks on DEI and the attacks on federal workers, which where African Americans are very significantly represented in that workforce, and it's of a piece with the attempt to erase Black history. So I think what we have to bring out, Frederick Douglass said in 1857, right, the white man's liberties are marked out for the same grave as the black man's. Right? Fascism in this country is neo-Confederate, and this all-out attack on the rights of African Americans is a signal of what is in store for every single member of the working class.
And not just African Americans, but Latino workers as well, because that's where they started denying habeas corpus, no hearing. If you have brown skin and you look different, and if you speak with an accent, we're picking you up, and we're not giving you a hearing, and we're sending you to, I don't know, El Salvador. We're sending you to South Sudan. We're sending you to anywhere but your right to see a judge before a court. I'm going to come back to the point that you made about Germany in just a minute. But Rosanna, so we asked in this show, the military is on the streets. What now? I heard this morning that your governor, Mr. Newsom, yesterday held a press conference reacting to what's taking place in Texas, where the governor there is trying to create 5 new congressional seats. And next to Texas, California is the most populous and uh, largest in population size. In fact, it's the 4th largest economy in the world. And Newsom says we got to fight fire with fire. And if y'all going to go do that in Texas, we're going to do it in California. The only difference is we're going to do it democratically, and they put some legislation together to bring citizens together to redraw the lines to create those extra districts. Now, if California is the 4th largest economy in the world, that also means that they have you have, not they, you, Rosanna, y'all have one of the most powerful working classes in the world. And so my question to you is, doesn't that mean that working class needs to be mobilized? Because redrawing the congressional lines, maybe that's not enough. And it has to be backed by people's power. And in your view, is that starting to happen in the great state of California? Can't hear you, Rosanna.
Sorry. Yes, I would say very much so. It is happening. Just as I mentioned before, this past Tuesday, we had a large contingent in taking back that park where you saw the military, do their little reconnaissance demonstration thing. That, by the way, members of the military themselves said that it wasn't effective. It's a practice they use, but for Los Angeles, when they used it, it didn't have the same results. It wasn't effective in the sense of terrorizing people and all of that. So we walked through the perimeter of the park, retaking our park, and but it was not just one group or one community group or one trade union, or one union. It was everyone. It was a combination. It was a coalition of community activists trade unions and legislators were there as well. So I think it is. I think it is gelling together. We have to do more, but I also want to say that that there's this trend that he continues to use, calling everybody criminals. He started with, the immigrants are criminals. We're only going to take the criminals, and as we see, only one third, if less than that, has been anyone who had been convicted of any kind of crime. And so, and now in DC, he say, oh, we got to get rid of the criminals. And who's he targeting? Who is he targeting? Youth. He's targeting black people. He's targeting immigrants as well. But this idea that people are going to believe that the high crime requires this kind of actions is what we have to be very much aware of, and not fall for that line, because it's totally false. And even it's been proven to be totally false.
And if you want to go after the criminals, why don't you go after the criminals on Wall Street?
And those on
That's what I
Epstein
want to know.
list.
Huh?
And those on the Epstein list.
And those on the Epstein list. Yeah. Why don't you go after them? I mean, Wall Street in 2007, 2008 almost brought down the world economy, you know, by speculating on subprime loans, which they then bet against. And because they knew that the people couldn't pay them back because they didn't have enough money because the loans escalated, So first you're paying $400 a month. The next thing you know, you're paying six, seven, $800 a month. And then they bet against those loans, and they knew that they were going to fail, and they almost brought down the world economy, and not one person went to jail. And that's largely why, well, it's one of the contributing factors to the economic and political situation that we're faced with today. But Bennett, let's go back to DC for a minute. Talk to us about how DC is responding. As
So DC, DC,
Scott pointed out, DC has a very big and historic African American population. And so when you talk about taking over DC, you're talking about disenfranchising, disempowering African Americans in the first place, but also Latinos, Asians, whites, and so on and so forth. So talk to us about how the Free DC Coalition and the people of DC are responding. What are your plans and goals? Please.
so Scott is absolutely right. DC is a black city. DC is Chocolate City. Douglas Commonwealth is the name proposed for DC as a state after Frederick Douglass. And this is important because there are MAGA pundits like Benny Johnson who have called for the bulldozing and ethnic cleansing of black neighborhoods in DC. That there is a serious attempt to persecute, displace, and criminalize black communities in DC, point blank. Um, but DC is responding, like DC has always responded. When the Red Summer happened in 1919, black Washingtonians shut it down really fast. They armed themselves on right near U Street, and they fought off white mobs. And DC's spirit of resistance continues to this day. We are a part of the Free DC coalition, um, which has thousands of people involved all across the district who are following a program of noncompliance. We are refusing to obey in advance these kinds of fascistic dictates from the White House. And we are organizing ourselves to defend the self governance of DC, um, even if some of our officials are not. Mayor Bowser, in many ways, has capitulated to Trump, and is allegedly off in Martha's Vineyard, as some rumors have stated. And so there's a lot. But there's a lot of resistance from the people who are heckling these National Guard officers who are diverting traffic away from traffic checkpoints that have been set up to detain people and pull them out of their cars and arrest them, which has been happening in DC. on the streets at night. Um, and people are diverting traffic enough that they shut down the checkpoints. People are refusing to comply. They are resisting, and we will continue to do so until the National Guard is gone. But I think that the key thing that we have to understand about DC is that DC is a semi-colony. DC exists in a colonial relationship to the federal government where DC residents are taxed, their labor is exploited, but they do not get to reap the benefits of the federal government that they fund. You know, there's no Congress people, there's no representative who can defend us at a federal level. And so it's important to note that while DC residents will continue to resist this occupation, it is essential that people all across the country join in the fight to defend DC, because what happens in DC will define what happens in the rest of the country, because this is Trump's opportunity to essentially set up a fascist playground in the nation's capital without any kind of state government to fight back against it. And so it's really important that we emphasize that particular key factor here.
I'm glad you made that point. Um, um, One about the protests, and I hear that they're also throwing sandwiches. I don't know if that's true.
Yes.
It reminded me of the time in Iraq when they had that press conference and one of the Iraqi patriots threw a shoe at George Bush. I mean, if you're going to throw something, I guess a sandwich is as good as anything else. But the point about, not that we're advocating attacking anybody, but people are going to do what they're going to do. But I'm glad you made the point about solidarity, Bennett, because DC can't do it by themselves. Their semi-colonial status, as you put it, kind of prohibits that. We need help from the rest of the country. How can others help? How can we help in New York? And how can they help in LA and in Chicago and in Michigan and Nebraska and other parts of the country, in
I
your
think
opinion?
one of the main things is we don't have Congress people, so we need yours. Um, I mean that's a very kind of plain way of putting it, but I mean DC statehood is a necessity. Um, the lack of statehood prevents us from doing a lot of the things that we want to do. Congress has the ability to overturn any law that we pass based on their kind of colonial oversight of DC's government. So we really urge people to engage in solidarity and demonstrations in solidarity, but also to call your representatives, especially to your House representatives, to advance H.R. 51, which was introduced by DC's shadow representative in Congress to establish DC statehood, to establish Douglas Commonwealth. And I think that this is really key here because it's one thing for the Democratic Party to tweet DC statehood now, but we need people to actually put the pedal to the metal. We need people to actually begin to introduce these issues and push for these issues on a federal level, because we can't. And so I think that that is a really important show of solidarity, is by prioritizing this fight for DC statehood and DC self-governance at a national level when you're engaging with your representatives.
Good point. And all of that, keep saying again and again, has to be backed by massive mobilization of our people, working people in the first place. The legislation by itself is just legislation, which is not to say I'm downplaying pushing for it. We should, but it's got to be backed by working class and people's power. Scott, you live in upstate New York. And as quiet as it's kept, you live in a small town, and as quiet as it's kept, that's where the majority of Americans live. Small town USA. So, how is your community responding to these challenges, this threat to bourgeois democracy, which is better than no democracy at all, which is where we're getting close to? What's it like on the ground in a small town USA, upstate New York? Did people turn out
Um,
for April 5th? Did they turn out for No Kings? Did they turn
yeah,
out? What's happening in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, we get so I live in a small town with some small cities nearby. So Binghamton, New York's about 45 minutes away. Ithaca, New York's about 45 minutes away. Um, so there are bigger demonstrations there. But even in my small town, uh, we'll get a couple hundred people turning out for um, rallies in defense of the post office or the hands-off stuff. No kings. I think the situation is that um, people are looking for something more than bourgeois democracy. I mean, there is, you know, much more sort of progressive activity than people maybe think exists in small towns. But even beyond that, uh, there's a desire, there's an openness to um, new ideas about what society should look like. So one of the things I'm involved in is trying to set up a party club here, and we have about 6 members now, and are having some public events, and it's going pretty well. Uh, but I think yeah, there's it can't just be defense of bourgeois democracy. And that's kind of what the party has always said. We struggle for democracy. And the struggle for democracy necessarily leads beyond capitalism. And if we don't have our eyes on where we're headed, we're not going to get there.
We are not going to get there. Well, that's good to hear. And that's one of the reasons why Mamdani in New York won the Democratic primary because he focused, on a campaign that was centered on affordability, but they are also projecting a new vision for the city and possibly for the country, you know, and that's an important thing because we kind of got to the point where unless you introduce radical democratic reforms that address the plight of working people, we're not going to go back to the status quo ante. We got to go forward in a new direction. Rosanna, you recently said that, shared with us that the May Day coalition in LA has become permanent and that it's one of the movers and shakers in the People's Fight Back coalition. Um, and you spoke to the breadth of that coalition, including May Day, but not only, involving very diverse communities and class forces, and even elected officials. And you talked about the mayors in the small towns, and you talked about the mayor of LA. How did that come about? And is that coalition continuing to grow?
Yeah, I think it's continuing to grow. It's also helping to do some town halls where give people information, including representatives from the cities, the mayors, or key representatives in different areas. We're planning one in Wilmington, California, which is by the ports. Terminal Island is being used to house the vehicles, the ICE vehicles. Um, so yes, definitely, it's growing. It's taking actions in various ways. The SEIU 721 and CHIRLA, who are the main leaders of this coalition, have set up a summer of resistance right in the heart of Los Angeles, right, and about a quarter mile from the detention center there. And every day there's actions happening, including a visit to the detention center, a march to the detention center, and the fact that the mayor and the legislators have gotten involved, I think is in part of the because of this invasion of the city, and I think the recognition by the mayor that it's more than just this attempt to get criminals, but it's an attempt to take over Los Angeles. And she was very clear about the fact that Los Angeles was an experiment by the administration, and that if they won in Los Angeles, they knew that they could win everywhere else. And so and it was key for her to recognize that, and it was key for her to get all of her supporters of the different areas of the city apparatus, like the City of Commerce and the Board of Supervisors and the Board of all these bodies, and show the force that she had to fight. And then also the community, has also put enough pressure for her to take certain stands that take a stronger stand. And I think that's why when the military went to this particular park, she she immediately canceled whatever other agenda items she had for the day and went directly to the park and demanded that they leave the park, and especially spoke to the I forget what the person's name in ICE, told them to get everybody out, to order them out. And they left. They left with four empty vans that they had set up to pick up folks.
I saw on Instagram the other day, it made me smile. There was a demonstration of people running after the ice trucks, and in front of the people was a fire truck. So you had the fire department with the siren on, and you had the people protesting, all of them racing down the street with empty ICE vehicles after them. I said, "Oh my goodness, the firemen are
And
involved."
that happened in one of the small cities in the surrounding of Los Angeles. And I want to say one more thing. The school started yesterday, and the United Teachers of Union ask folks to police and be at the schools, to be not police but patrol, to see if there's any presence of ICE and to report any presence of ICE in an attempt to protect our children. So I was out in my community, and it was really nice because there were other people that I didn't know out there as well, protecting our children from ICE, because they have attempted to take children from the school. And the board, that the superintendent of schools has made it clear that ICE will not enter the schools, that he himself was an immigrant and understands the plight of immigrants, and that they're not criminals, and that he has given orders to shut down the schools if any presence of ICE happens. They have a special place where parents can sit in the school if they don't feel that it's safe to go outside as well. So this growing community of help, of of support, and of resistance really is just so widespread that sometimes it's hard to keep track of every type of action that's happening in support of immigrants.
Important to know. And he was he came here as a child with no papers, as I recall,
Yes,
that superintendent.
yes. Hmm.
So it's a very brave thing for him to do. They can go after folks like that. Say, well, you're naturalized, so you don't have the same rights as somebody born here. Bennett, now we're going to have a famous lightning round. So get ready. We're going to rate the fascist danger on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being not so bad, 10 being full scale dictatorship. Where would you put the fascist danger on this fine Friday afternoon, August 15th? 1 to 10, where would you rank it?
Looking at it from DC, it feels around a 7 or 8. It feels pretty scary. I mean, people are obviously fighting back. Nothing's been concretely determined yet, but armored cars on the street, it's feeling pretty scary.
I was in D.C. last weekend, 2 weekends ago, for David's memorial, and I got there, and on my way back, I'm at Union Station, and there police walking around with dogs. 2 sets of them. I never saw that before in D.C. I was like, what is going on here? Scott, 1 to 10. How would you rate the fascist danger?
Um, that's a hard one. It's a lot harder to feel in its immediacy where I am. But looking at DC, um, I mean, there's very little separating what is happening in DC from fascism, if anything, separating it. So I'm going to say a 10 in the sense that the substitution of direct um, violent terrorist dictatorship has already been established over parts of this country.
10. Oh my goodness. Okay. 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 Rosanna, 1 to 10.
Yeah,
Where would
well,
you?
I would say a seven. I would say because I think we have to take into account the fight back. And the fight back is very strong, very, very strong. Like I said, and it's not just here in Los Angeles. I've seen videos from Iowa, from Nebraska. They really hammered the representative in Nebraska. They really, just and Nebraska, you don't hear a lot of from them, and you always feel like they're a lot more conservative, but they were really hammering that Congress member. So I would include the fight back. So I would say seven.
Yeah. Last time we did this, I think I said 2.3 or 3.2, you know? But since then, we had April 5th, which was huge. We had No King's Day, which was even huger. We had No Good Trouble, which wasn't all that big, but still people were fighting. And you're right, these town halls that are taking place, and then there's a huge movement on the ground, on the one hand. But on the other hand, Trump and them, they don't care. They do not care. They're going to win ugly. They're going to do whatever they just, well, they do care, which is why they're doing what they did. They're trying to do in Texas, trying to get those 5 additional congressional seats. But when you push a fascist animal up against the wall, y'all, ain't no telling what they might do. So, in any event, I'm going to say 5.5. I'm going to go from 3.2 to 5.5. And we'll check in again on it. I don't know if you average that out, you probably get somewhere around
Seven.
8.9. Oh, 7. 7. Okay. Scott's quick with those kinds of things. Don't ask him to read something quickly because you close your eyes and open them back up again, blinking. It's already read. We're going to have our mailbag question of the week. Putin and Mr. Trump, Mr. Man, in Alaska. And just by chance, our mailbag question is, what is the party's position on the slaughter in Ukraine? Should Ukraine allow Russia to annex its land? Scott or
Well, I
Anna
think
or
that's.
Bennett, who wants to go first?
I'll jump in. I think that the way this meeting is set up tells you kind of everything you need to know about what it is. This is not about peace. It's not about the democratic rights of the Ukrainian people or the rights of the uh, Russian the ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine. It's about dividing up the spoils, right? and that's what it was before as well. And specifically, we have to, as Americans, we have to, as U.S. Residents, we have to be very uh, attentive to the role of the United States and NATO in this, which has not played the role of a disinterested, altruistic protector of Ukraine. It has been interested in gaining access to um, energy markets, to resources, to opportunities to sell weapons, right? So this is what is happening between Trump and Putin is not about the democratic rights of the Ukrainian people, about their national sovereignty, self determination. Um, those are other questions, and um, we do not support the use of troops to seize um, land in other countries, but we also don't support the use of trade deals and economic sanctions and imperialist pressure and intervention to expand NATO's reach.
Okay, fair enough. Rosanna, you want to add anything?
Well, I think we're against any kind of slaughter of any people. We're not. We're a peaceful people that want peace, and we struggle for peace, and we're totally against this kind of slaughtering, and we're against the conquering of anybody's land. We believe in sovereignty. We believe in people being able to determine their own future and plan without any intervention. So that's my response.
Good point. Good point. Bennett?
I think that our duty is to the working class of any country. And it's clear that the interests of the working class in both Ukraine and in Russia is for peace and for an end to interference from the West. I mean, the United States has set up, you know, far right governments in Ukraine, in 2014. And um, so there is a need for to not kind of romanticize the the destitution and deaths of all of these people in this conflict that is being egged on by the United States and NATO forces. I think it's essential that we advocate and organize for an end to this war and for peace to prevail and for self-determination for the working class people affected by this conflict.
I would agree with all of you 100%. And I put that question back up again. And with respect to the possible uh, deals that might be made and ceding territory, because I think that question, if you could put that question back up again, producer, we'd appreciate it very much. We do not think that anybody but the people of Ukraine have a right to make any kind of decision about what happens in their country. It's their decision. Ain't nobody else's decision. You know, our position from Jump Street was that Russia needed to take out its troops, and NATO and the U.S. imperialism needed to stop their attempt to push the border eastward and surround the Russian uh, Republic and those other countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, because that's what set the stage for all of this. And our responsibility has to build a movement in these United States to stay the hand of U.S. imperialism in that part of the world and stop it interfering. And unfortunately, we're a ways from doing that, which is why we're holding a peace conference in November to up our responsibility and role and participation in that movement. So we'll see what happens today as a result of that summit. Well, that does it for this edition of Good Morning Revolution. In the next days, we are getting ready to participate in August 28th in a march on Wall Street. The African American Freedom Movement in coalition with others are marching on Wall Street around the issue of diversity, inclusion, equity. You know, we're building a campaign along with other movements around the country to boycott Target. Can you see that? And and back after this show, we're on our way to Target on the corner. And we're going to be handing out cards and encouraging people not to go in, not to shop there. I know, Bennett, y'all been doing it in DC for about a month now, and we're Johnny come lately, but we're trying to catch up. And that's good competition for good trouble. Until next week, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. And if we do that, victory is assured. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.
Later,
Solidarity to
comrades.
all our friends in DC. We stand with you. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.